Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Magus. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what we do on this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple. We like to talk about games. And I guess before we get to the Magus, there's plenty of games that we have played recently. I guess the most recent thing was Hell's Rebels, and then before that was Rune Lords, right?
Yeah, because, the moment we decided to set a schedule was the moment that we broke it, so we're actually recording this after the Hell's Rebels game instead of the night before.
Yep. We're real good at this, guys. We promise.
Yeah, so Hell's Rebels, the party saw its first combat ever, and we almost only killed one of the party members. I honestly, it wasn't even me.
I fucked that up. I should have made somebody spend an action point. I was just like, because that was the point, right? Like the point was he was holding the hostage and he had the ready to action, and if anybody attacked him, he would just standard attack Alaric or whatever. But then I was just like, I can't murder him because I just whiffed and I forgot that action points were a thing. So I should have forced an action point out of either Enoch or Charles in order to not die. But hey.
What are the rules for action points again? Because I didn't think we had any yet, or maybe
because you guys are level 2 now. You have 2. You have one from level 1, one from level 2.
Okay.
And then you can use them to force any die roll that affects you to either be a 20 or a 1, like a nat 20 or a nat 1. And you can also use it to kind of activate cinematic license when it comes to stuff. So if you want to do something that would be very much like this is Legolas sliding down the stairs on the shield. It looks cool, but mechanically he would have to hit a DC 80, acrobatics check. That kind of thing.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
To just kind of waive all of that bullshit. It's so that rule of cool can take over.
That's fair. I think part of that was, I don't think it was particularly clear that the guy was standing with a ready to action. I think that if you pushed it, Enoch would have been like, oh, I didn't know it was a ready to action, and kind of rethought what he was doing. I think Enoch, or in this case it was Rakax, thought that he had the opportunity to get a hit on him before he went for the strike.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was that, though. I would beg to understand what else, what else is he going to do when he runs over there and then on his turn he, you know what I mean? Does that not telegraph ready to action?
Yeah, I mean, it also might be one of those kind of one of those moments where the player will try something to see if it works and expect the GM to push back if it wouldn't, type of deal. Not that I would ever accuse Enoch of being cheesy, but I am, and I would. So yeah,
it's kind of like a fair enough moment, I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I don't think it went particularly. I thought it went well, other than that particular moment, and I think the appropriate punishment, which was, the clear thread to the next piece of that storyline, kind of was eliminated. It's you killed the only person with information, and absolutely nobody else has that information. So
yeah, that's also a little bit true. To be honest, I expected you to be a little bit more. That encounter was built for a couple of different ways, and I had expected, maybe they'll just bust down the door and start attacking everybody in sight. Maybe that would be a thing, but that wasn't the most probable outcome in my head. So when that was how you guys handled it, I was kind of well, fair enough.
Well, what were you expecting? I'm curious.
I was expecting, maybe you would try and talk your way in, kind of thing, or you would try and sneak, a section by section, try and take people out in a quieter fashion. But.
Yeah, so I think part of what happened there was that there's, at least From my perspective, I felt like there was this kind of very real itch to actually, like sling some swords around.
Yeah, I 100%. That's exactly what I feel was the case as well.
And I think part of it too is like I had some silly plan to maybe try and like disguise myself as somebody, and then you had Gondar shoot that down pretty hard. So at least I thought that was you as a GM suggesting to us that busting down the door was the right way to go with it.
I've done my very best actually not to suggest not to suggest these things, but yeah, a little bit.
I think this is what I think is actually this might even be a potential for another episode. Let me write it down. But this kind of thing where like things that the NPCs do can kind of act as the GM's voice in a way to kind of be like, guys, I'd really appreciate it if you did things this way. It's like, well, if I didn't have any particular desire to do anything in a different way, then, why not? If that makes sense.
Farewell. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Farewell.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to say fair enough, but I said farewell instead. I don't know.
Goodbye, buddy. The rest of the podcast.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, good podcast, everybody. Yeah, I mean, if you ever see me, if you ever see all of the NPCs gang up and say this idea is the idea, and everybody's kind of universally for it, that is probably a lot of that's probably me as the GM kind of saying hint hint nudge nudge, here we go this way. But for the most part, like I want the NPCs to have different personalities. I want them to have different perspectives, right? Obviously, Taylor is the ultimate pragmatist, right? And as far as she is concerned, anything that isn't like a utilitarian benefit to the organization is a waste of time. Whereas people like Lyra and Mateo are more concerned with, yeah, obviously that makes sense, but doing the right thing is doing the right thing, and you can't ask me to sit here and just let these kidnapped people, stay kidnapped and then get whatever happens to them for like the witch cult kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's speaking a little bit more to the after action. But I think part of this too is, to your credit, you've built a very nice stable of NPCs with varying personalities, and I think that in most games you get like one or two of them, and so you don't get the opportunity to see multiple characters having opposing viewpoints. So the one viewpoint kind of becomes the GM suggestion.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And I also think that this is just because of this is the kind of game that I want out of Hell's Rebels, right? A lot of it is, like there are not super overt, but there are real consequences to taking certain actions before other actions, right? And so making those kinds of choices is, it's a little bit of a mechanics thing, but it's mostly of a narrative thing, right? And so like, having half of the NPCs say, well, I think it's a good idea to go get these people because we should be good people and that's important. And the other half of the NPCs saying that's a waste of time. We should be more focused on our stated goal of recruiting people. That creates a good dynamic for players to kind of define themselves one way or the other, right?
Right.
And I think there are going to be plenty of time, there are probably going to be plenty of times where that works out in not, my goal is for like the players to actually fight this stuff out a little bit. Like have one person want to go one way and somebody else go the other, and actually have that be like a real thing, because I think obviously you guys have different personalities, and that's,
No.
These things, DMing, D&D, they happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and then we played Rune Lords, where I don't remember what we did. We just stormed the castle, I guess.
Yeah, we did some more fighting. We fought some more things. We killed all of the ogres, and then we half killed the witch, or the Lamia.
Oh, yeah, what the fuck
she teleported away.
Oh, I hate that stuff.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yeah, it is what it is. Although I do think I particularly enjoyed the moment when the tempting of Rufus was happening, and he walked over. I don't think any of us were sure what was going to happen, and then Rufus just stabbed her in the neck.
I don't know if that's good characterization or the fact that Nick has been playing this chaotic evil character. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like
because I found myself in the same place. I was like, I have no logical reason for why Rufus should turn that down.
Yeah, no, I think that the motivations there are maybe a little bit shaky. I think if pressed for one, it'd be something along the line. You could come up with something along the lines of Rufus doesn't want to be a pawn to anybody or whatnot. But the fact that tension was there was good. It's like, do you read Order of the Stick?
Yeah, dude. Oh man, I love Order of the Stick.
Yeah, it's kind of like, why does, I think it's Belcar, the halfling thief, why does he ever do anything along the lines of the party, even though he's very clearly, like, I think he's actually a very, very clear analog to Rufus in this situation. And it's kind of like, well, he might be an asshole, but, you know, like, the people he's with are his asshole friends, and he can be evil, but being evil does not necessarily mean being disloyal.
That's true. Yeah, I think, Order of the Stick has been going on for a long time. It's a lot. There's kind of like a lot to unpack in that, I suppose.
Yes, there is.
But, man, dude, I love Order of the Stick. Ah, so good.
Yeah. well, that covers tabletop stuff. You anything interesting in video games this week?
Yeah, I've been spamming League, spamming Minecraft. Have I talked about Minecraft? I've been playing Minecraft, listeners. I don't know if I've told you yet, but I've been playing lots of it because WoW has kind of run its course to a certain extent. I've like farmed up all of the stuff that I want to like feasibly farm up, and then my shit stopped selling on the auction house. So I just kind of was like, all right, well, and then I bought a Minecraft server or realm or whatever it's called, and so I've been ensconced deep in the Minecraft well of, mining up bullshit, and then watching Daredevil and House of Cards and stuff. I just finished rewatching Daredevil season 1. I liked it a little bit better than that first time, but I really fucking hate Foggy and Karen.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah, Foggy.
That whole show. Oh. Tanked by that one guy, like.
I didn't think he tanked the show. I thought Foggy was kind of lovable in a dumb way, but I couldn't tell if his acting wouldn't because he was supposed to be, or if he was just really that bad. But that's I think we could do a whole episode on Daredevil. We keep talking about doing like
they did just come out with season 2. It would be kind of sort of topical.
Yeah, but I have to watch it. I still haven't. So maybe coming soon. No promises, listeners. The only thing I wanted to bring up is that I haven't been playing because it's not out yet, but I've been super pumping myself up on Stellaris, which is the Paradox Entertainment space game. And they just set a release date. It's May 9th, so it comes out before Total Warhammer now.
Oh, fuck. No, man. Fuck. Wow, okay.
And they've been releasing gameplay videos and like stuff, and I'm just like, oh boy, 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 because it's like cool things like apparently part of like you're supposed to almost design your race every time you play, and all the races, like one of the big first decisions you make before the game even starts is what's your initial faster than light travel capacity. You can either do like Mash Driver, which is slower but can go anywhere, or Hyperspace, which you have to travel along certain defined lanes, or you can do Wormhole, where you have to build essentially like Mass Effect gates, and they can either pull you or push you out to certain points, but you can't do fast and light travel other than that. So I think that's all super cool, and I'm super I'm pumped for all that.
I've kind of purposefully avoided looking too far into it. Because I actually have kind of a tough relationship with certain. I've realized that like some of my strategy games, like I get really hardcore into, like Europa Universalis, Civ 5, obviously, but then other ones I just it never quite clicks for me. Endless Legend and Endless Space being the two that immediately jump to kind of the fore, and so I'm like I like Paradox a lot. I really want to get into it, but I fear that it's going to be another Crusader Kings for me, rather than another Europa Universalis.
Oh, you didn't like Crusader Kings?
I just never got into it. I mean,
Okay.
how much time do I have? I have 11 hours played on Crusader Kings 2, but that pales in comparison to my 160 hours on Europa.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're unfamiliar with the game series, that might sound like a lot of time, but it's not. But yeah, no, I definitely feel that. As someone who appreciated both Crusader, the only game I think of Paradox that I haven't been able to get into was Hearts of Iron 3. And I haven't watched any of the Hearts of Iron 4 stuff, which comes out in June. Jesus, they're providing a ton of stuff.
I am told that Hearts of Iron 4 is going to be better. I watched a Quill 18 video about it where I guess he went to go play the alpha or whatever, but he was basically like, yeah, this is way less spreadsheets and way more, what you want from it.
Yeah. That's Quill 18 is actually how I saw Stellaris. He played, he both did a sit down with one of the devs, and he did a play with, two other YouTuber types, like Briarstone and, like, Kiss for Luck, I think. Kiss for Luck being somebody he's done EU4 playthroughs with. But I am very interested in all of that because I don't know, it just looks cool. I like space, and I don't know. I've been hyped for it. So, I guess it's about a month until that. Or 2 months, or a month and 2 weeks. Let's call it. Split the difference.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's all I'm hyped for. Otherwise, I've been playing some Dark Souls because Dark Souls 3 comes out soon. And I have tried to get into that game, I want to say 6 times. Like, this is my 6th attempt. And every other time, I've just gotten, like, maybe... Like, the first time, I never got through the opening. The second time, I got through the second and third and, like, fourth times, I got through the opening. And then I just kind of fell off. And then the 5th time, I got to the first area, and then, like, I died, like, twice. And I was just like, I can't deal with this. And then in between that time and this time, I played Bloodborne for a fair amount. I kind of got, like, it kind of clicked with me as to, like, how like, the iteration path is supposed to work for those games. And so I'm enjoying it much more now. I've gotten significantly deeper into it. And so I'm having a lot more fun with that.
And we talked a bit about this in our difficulty episode, and I think Demon Souls, Dark Souls is kind of an okay example of what I was getting at when I said that difficulty is only an aesthetics thing when it comes to, like, narrative games like that. And I think the difficulty in the Dark Souls games is reflective of that, super grimdark narrative. Like these things are very well entwined, and one reinforces the other, and that's a good thing. But it's also just kind of like, I kind of couldn't be fucked, like I don't get a lot of pleasure out of the, like, oh, I beat this game at the hardest fucking difficulty, and like that stuff just doesn't appeal to me all that much, and I don't get a lot of pride or whatever else from it. So I don't know. Dark Souls, Demon Souls have kind of always been off my list, off my radar for that reason.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people, I think this is going back to finally kind of clicked for me, is I think people assume that because you die a lot, that means the game is hard. The game isn't actually that hard. I think people just aren't used to the type of loop that the Souls games and Bloodborne kind of set up for you, which is if you screw up, you'll die, and it appears, when you lose your souls or your blood, if it's Bloodborne, that you're losing a lot of progress, but you're really not. It's just that's the way. That's like the way you're supposed to play the game, in the same type of kind of way that, like, when you're playing Super Meat Boy, you might fail 100 times before you get it. and yeah, it's difficult, but like it's difficult, but the loop is like the core gameplay loop is supposed to include that kind of experimentation and mastery development, which I think passes by a lot of people, especially when they're coming into Dark Souls after having played, say, something like Diablo or maybe that's the only thing I can think of right now. But something like that, where like
right, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Less.
Yeah, I don't know. I've also people only ever talk about it in the context of that difficulty thing. So no one's ever made an appeal to me that, oh, Dark Souls has really great RPG mechanics, or oh, Dark Souls actually has like a really interesting and cool story. That's the only thing people have ever talked to me about it. So it's just kind of always been filed away in I could give a fuck land. Like,
yeah. Also, the story in that game is very much kind of like you have to read it. You can. There's some direct stuff, but it's a lot of reading it off of items and in descriptions, and it's all kind of like very loose. And people spend a while like crafting large theories about what's actually happening and how everything fits together, but it's interesting in that way. But I feel like it might not scratch your particular itches when it comes to storytelling.
Probably not. I also think that I don't know. I also kind of feel like somewhere along the line, I used to really be all about that shit. Like let's listen to all the audio logs and read all of the little bullshit in BioShock or in Dishonored or whatever,
or in Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, or in Mass Effect, but even Mass Effect doesn't really have all that much.
Have you read the codexes?
It has. Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's true. The codexes.
Like none of it's. So I think this is actually kind of the difference, right? Like Mass Effect 2, you've got a central story that you don't need to read the codexes to really understand or get. And I feel like a lot of the depth in Dark Souls is in that kind of like codex level extra information, which is something in Mass Effect you can dig into if you want to, but is in no way necessary for proper enjoyment of that story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was really hyper about the codex when I first played it, but that was 5 years ago. So, but like little things like the reason Thresher I like it because it explains a lot of stuff. Like the reason Thresher Maws are on so many different worlds is because they actually are they reproduce with these special spores that can survive in space. And so they've just been around for billions and billions of years, and these spores just hit an atmosphere, and they just like grow naturally, kind of thing. And I think so that kind of, nobody ever explains that, right? But it is in the codex if you
right.
Like if you want to go into it. The same stuff with kind of like the First Contact War, or just kind of like whatever else. Like if you want an explanation, it's there. It's in the codex. Dragon Age is also a lot like this, by the way. Dragon Age also has like do you ever wonder why, like the elves are fucking slaves? Well, Dragon Age is going to answer that question for you in like a gigantic codex entry. So, but yeah, that's a little bit different than, to me, that's a little bit different than BioShock, which is, it's telling a parallel narrative, right? Like it's telling the story of, in the audio logs of in BioShock Infinite, there's this one guy who's a big game hunter, and he's brought on as like kind of almost an assassin by Comstock, but he ends up working for the Revolution, and you get his story in 6 or 7 audio logs. Like that's the phenomenon that I mean.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. But that's not the topic of today's episode.
That is not the topic of today's episode. Today's episode is about the Magus.
So yeah, we're just gonna kind of go down the list of features, right? Like we've done with other classes. So the reason we decided to do the Magus, we're gonna do at various sundry times different classes. The reason we start with the Magus because, at least to my mind, the fantasy of playing a battle mage is a very common one, a very solid kind of like idea for something to do. I think Magus was one of Paizo's first steps into kind of like really kind of fulfilling those kinds of fantasies. And I think it's I think it does the job very well. And it's also
I think it does the job very well, but I also think it has some missteps. It doesn't ring. I think there are a couple of Paizo classes that ring really true. Alchemist, right? Like the Alchemist is basically perfectly designed as far as I'm concerned to like fit that fantasy. Whereas I feel like Magus, it's close.
See, I feel
you don't like the Alchemist.
So I don't. So I think the Alchemist falls into the trap of we have there are 3 things you could imagine when we're talking about a fantasy alchemist, and we've done all of them with this class. And if you really want to focus on one of them, you need to take an archetype. I don't think mutagens and bombs go well together. I don't see them working. This is almost like a druid problem where you want to do all of the things, and as a result, you do a lot of them not so great. I like the alchemist, but I think that the half spellcaster, half range thing, and half Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde doesn't quite add up to what it wants to be.
So I also think that I don't think that mutagen or bombs are underserved mechanics, though. I kind of feel I kind of get what you're saying about the druid, but I feel like that's because the druid is I feel like the mechanics aren't the mechanics aren't super well supported, but I think individually mutagen is a good mechanic, and I think individually bombs are really good mechanics, and I think they mesh well because your alchemist talents, or whatever they're called, are your level, the thing that you use to kind of specialize yourself. You don't need to take an archetype to make that stuff work.
You don't have to take it to make it work, but so something I really dislike is kind of any class feature that you don't use because that's not your particular build of it. I feel naturally you want to take an archetype that replaces the class feature you don't use with something else.
Jeez, God. I mean, I maybe I'm a little bit rusty on Alchemist, but I always feel
You know what? I might be too. So let's table this. And
yes, fair enough.
Very soon you can count on an Alchemist episode.
I don't think I don't remember what it is, but I do think that mutagen is just always applicable, and bombs are just kind of always applicable, and they're pretty good in every build. I don't, Anyway, but that's what I'm thinking. I'll have to read
coming soon, Alchemist episode.
Yeah, coming soon. TM trademark.
Yeah,
right.
See, I wrote it down in the ideas document, so we won't forget
Okay, good. Okay, so Magus though, Battle Mage.
Yes, Battle Mage. To finish the thought off, part of the reason why we're doing the Magus is it's old, so there's a bunch of content for it, but it's not fighter level number of archetypes and content built for it. So hopefully we can get through it in the remaining hour or so that we have. But yeah, did you want to say anything overarching before we got into the?
I think you might get mad at me about this, but I think that it fulfills that battle mage archetype, but it doesn't carve out its own niche for it. It's a little too kind of generalist and bland to a certain extent. Whereas, Sorcerer, right? 9th level, spontaneous prepared spontaneous spellcaster, right? But it also has these bloodlines, and these bloodlines are really, they really flavor the class in an interesting way. In the same way, even wizards, right? When you choose your spell school thing or whatever, that's kind of this method to flavor the class. But Magus, because Battle Mage is such kind of a wide open playing field in terms of stuff that it's applicable to, suffers because I think it has a lot of mechanics that are well served but bland, right?
See, I think that the flavor you're talking about comes a lot from the Magus Arcana, but I see your point.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah, because Magus is a class that I feel like I would definitely take an archetype more or less no matter what in, because it doesn't kind of have enough intrinsic flavor on its own. I feel like I would need to find something else to like latch on to flavor to flavor it for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair.
Yeah. Well, let's go down the list and see.
Okay.
And we can hash it out in the weeds. If we start with weapon and armor proficiency, I don't really have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I think it's obviously important that Maguses can use light armor with their. Obviously, light armor has a spell failure chance, and you just kind of have to deal with that when you're playing a wizard or a sorcerer or whatever. And it's a good use of the Magus' time to not have that problem, right? They're gonna have to wear armor. That's just kind of a part of it.
Right, and as you level up, you can gain access to, or the standard class that gives you medium and heavy armor, as proficiency and without spell failure chance. But I also think that kind of, I think that in kind of service to your earlier argument, also kind of prevents, like you can't wear your father's armor without significant without significant risk to yourself, or significant wasting of essentially that feature. To go back to my earlier point, it's like either you have to change your armor whenever you get the next level to fully utilize that class feature, or it's just kind of wasted, or you have to deal with taking penalties to like spell failure chance until you hit that point, which I also think is not great. But I think a lot of, as you said, the archetypes are pretty good, and a lot of the archetypes kind of deal with those kind of problems.
Yeah, I think the archetypes do kind of deal with those problems. I don't know. I feel like this is a very baseline. I'm going to use this line a lot, but it is something that I feel like the Magus needs, right, in order to get in this space. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't add flavor to the class in a way that I would say, like, It's very mechanical, not very flavorful, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say to that point, I do think I like kind of more blank slate classes, because then you can kind of put your own flavor on it without having the kind of baggage that sometimes the classes come with, like say a paladin would.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but I think that the brawler is still a pretty blank slate class, but martial flexibility really flavors it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And the focus on these combat maneuvers, or similarly something like gunslinger. There's plenty of different ways that you can think about or play a gunslinger, but the deeds and everything like that, they really like flavor the class. Really in one direction.
For me, that's really well accomplished with spell strike and spell combat, but we aren't quite there yet. So I'll bring that up when we get there. So do
you have anything about their spell list? This is the next thing, the Magus spell list.
I have never looked super closely at it, but I've never seemed like I've never looked at the spell list or like looked for a spell on a Magus and been like, man, I really wish he had this spell. And he's also got access to Arcana that give him, it's called like expanded arc or something.
Yeah,
he's got a way to broad study. Oh no, not broad study. That's something else. But you can get access to the Greater Wizard Sorcerer spell list. Spell blending. That and I feel like it works well. Like most of the spells on that list are combat-y spells, as it would be befitting a battle mage, instead of like the more wizardy type of like out of combat stuff. But I think it's relatively well put together. I don't think it has the same problems as, say, the Unchained Summoner, or not the Unchained Summoner, the Chained Summoner, I guess, which had a lot of fuckery with its spell list in order to give its access to some higher level spells with only 6 levels of spell playing. I don't think that's true for the Magus.
Yeah, there are a couple of spells on here that I was surprised. I am not a good like I'm not a mage person. I play martial classes generally, so I have a lot of command over martial feats, for instance, but I don't have a lot of command over spells and spell lists. But I was surprised at how many things felt like they were, these were things that were made for a magus, right? These were spells that were just like, this is a spell for a magus, like Blade Lash or, Force Sword, are like, some of some weapons appear only on the Magus spell list, but like most of them are like in weird spots, like, oh, this is on the witch spell list too, or whatever. But I don't know. I think that's super cool, and I do think that that's pretty interesting. And one of the ways that I feel like the class gains a lot of flavor is based on some of these more interesting spells, like River Whip, where you create a whip out of water and just whip people with it. Like, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think part of this is that if you look at some of the earlier stuff, even like, some wizard spells that seem that they were really made for the Magus, I think this is like an artifact of kind of, well, up until they made the Magus, there wasn't like a battle mage was the wizard that you figured out how to like make him survive in combat.
Right, yeah.
And so that those things kind of target those issues, I guess, but yeah, I think it's a good spell list, but I don't really have much more to say about that. Do you?
Mm-mm.
All right. The next thing on the list is the Arcane Pool. At first level, the Magus gains a reservoir of mystical arcane energy that he can draw upon to fuel his powers and enhance his weapon. This arcane pool has a number of points equal to half his Magus level, minimum 1, plus his intelligence modifier. The pool refreshes once per day when the Magus prepares a spell. At first level, the Magus can expend 1 point from his arcane pool as swift action. Grant any weapon he is holding a +1 enhancement bonus for 1 minute. For every 4 levels beyond the first, he gets another +1 enhancement bonus, maximum of +5 at 17th level. These bonuses can be added to the weapon, stacking with existing enhancement to a maximum of 5. Multiple uses of this ability do not stack with themselves. At 5th level, these bonuses can be used to add any of the following weapon properties: Dancing, Flaming Burst, Frost, Icy Burst, Keen Shock, Shocking Burst, Speed, or Vorpal. And you add them the same way you add the other enhancements.
So Vorpal adds, with 5. You can use 5 points from your arcane pool to get Vorpal, for instance.
Yeah. Yes.
I like this ability a lot, though. Honestly, I really feel as though it is just a. It's kind of like I think this ability is a little bit of a holdover from the fact that the Magus is not a full BAB class. Is the reason that it gets this whole ability. Which almost kind of like, and that's like a really weird way to frame it, but it does kind of tank it a little bit in my mind. Maybe if this was a full BAB class and it had an ability like this, maybe a little bit less powerful, I would think it would be a little bit cooler, more interesting. But I do really like, something I really enjoy about it is the ability to give your weapon properties these different properties. You can also take Arcana to unlock other weapon properties. I think you can use it. You can use Arcana to get Bane, for instance, so that you can use Bane with your arcane pool. And I think that stuff is really cool when it comes to playing and being the Magus.
Yeah, I also think that, like to your point about like this ability is cool, but it was built to kind of give the not full BAB something. It's also there as kind of like the minimum things that monks can do with their key pool, where like you can take Arcana and spend arcane pool points on doing stuff with your Arcana, which range from like like a mild blast to like I don't know, probably like assisted jumps or something like that. Let me see if I scroll through if I see anything that really hits me. But like you can use your arcane pool to make your melee attacks as touch attacks. It's called Accurate Strike or Arcane Deed. And you can get Swashbuckler Deeds and spend our arcane points to use Swashbuckler Deeds instead of Panache. And I think that this ability was also kind of thrown in there as like when they get it, what can they do with their points until they get like enough Arcana to make it kind of robust. and whatnot. Like I said, it's as similar as happens. I feel with like the monk key pool.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of it, too, especially in terms of like finding your flavor when you come in and you find, I don't know, some arcana that allows you to Enduring Blade, which increases the duration of your stuff so that you can keep it on for forever, or Hasted Assault, which allows you to cast haste on yourself using your arcane pool. These are things that allow you to find other ways to use your arcane pool besides just those ones that are listed, which I think is important.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I also think that it's something that Maguses forget to use. It's kind of one of those abilities that, Spell Combat, Spell Strike, these ones are like the big grade A, abilities, but this is kind of like a little bit more middle of the road, a little bit more middle tier in terms of kind of priority and how much people are thinking about that when they're thinking about their Magus.
Yeah. I think because of like the reason I outlined that, like, that's how I buff my, or that's how I cast like a little lightning bolt cantrip or something, or lightning bolt blast. That's not like you don't think about it for its base use. You think about it for its arcana use.
Yeah, definitely.
Although I do know that, like, say Mark, who I've played with, while he played a Black Blade, he actually used this ability all the time, to be very effective with it. And really like throw the damage out and really like stomp face. But that's what you get when you play with Captain Crunches.
Yeah, that's what you get. Yep. That is how Captain Crunch plays his games. But here we come to the meat of it, right? Spell combat
and spell strike. I kind of want to handle these both at once because I think the way they work in tandem works. But if you wanted to go,
yeah,
for
definitely. So spell combat functions like 2-weapon fighting, but instead of having an offhand weapon, the offhand weapon is the spell that you're casting, right? So in order to use it, you have to have the one hand free while wielding a light or one-handed melee weapon, and then as a full round action, you can make all of your attacks with your melee weapon at a -2 penalty, and then on top of that, you can cast a Magus spell from the list with a casting time of 1 standard action. I suppose, or less. It doesn't actually say that. You can cast the spell defensively, and you also gain more as you level up. I guess we might get down there later, but it doesn't just stay at 1 spell. It does eventually get to, when you do your quote-unquote full attack, you get 2 spells, or I think it goes up to 3 spells. And then I guess Spell Strike. Spell Strike allows you to cast a spell with the range of touch from the Magus spell list through the weapon that you're wielding. A lot of the times you see people use this with rapiers, where I have a rapier, I have Shocking Grasp, I use Shocking Grasp with Spell Strike to deliver it as part of my rapier attack. I think this is the corest of the core Magus abilities. Of all of the abilities that Magus has, Spell Strike is the one that has like the most interesting aspect to it, the most flavor to it, and I think it's what people are signing up to the class to buy. You know what I mean? Like that's what they're buying from the Magus in general. It also makes spells crit more effectively because it uses the weapon's crit range rather than the spell, just natural crit range of 20.
Yeah, and I think both. Well, first, just to point out, spell combat, you don't get to cast more spells. It just improves concentration checks.
Oh, it does? Man.
But I think that would actually be really broken if you really think about it. That's a lot of spells to be casting in one round.
I totally. Yeah. Well, I guess I
Anyway,
was misremembering. Anyway, yes, I was misremembering.
But back to back to the point at hand. Spell combat and spell strike, I think taken together, they might be some of my favorite mechanics in the game. Just like this feels powerful. It feels awesome. It feels really like you're a battle mage with a sword in one hand and a spell in the other. And I think that these work together just so well for that, and I think like you said, spell strike is what you sign up for. I think spell combat really complements that well, and like lets you kind of feel like the fury of battle. I don't know. I think it's awesome. I think it really makes this class come into its own.
I definitely think that's true too. I've never played a Magus. I do kind of want to eventually, but unfortunately, I kind of almost feel as though in the past couple of games that I've played in or played with or heard about being played, you know what I mean? Magus is probably the most common class. Because you played a Magus, Mark played a Magus, Lou played a Magus, Barry played a Magus. So in the past, just
in my Rune Lords game, we had 2 Maguses until one of them switched to War Priest.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's a giant ratio compared to. I guess Barbarians also have a pretty good track record in our group because Enoch and you played Barbarians.
Yeah, and then I played a Blood Rager, which is like a Magus and a Barbarian.
I love the Blood Rager, man.
No,
I think. Well, anyway, so I kind of almost don't want to play the Magus because I want to be a little bit of a hipster. I've seen a lot of Maguses, but I haven't really seen too many, sorcerers or wizards or
I think
otherwise ninth level spellcasters.
I think to your point about like you'd want to take an archetype, I think the archetypes are diverse enough that you can kind of get that unique experience.
That's true. I definitely we'll get to this when we get in depth on the archetypes. But there are definitely some that I watch people gravitate towards, kind of like Mysterious Stranger, whatever it's called for Gunslinger. It just kind of seems to be the archetype that everybody takes on that class.
Yeah. That I think part of that is specifically with Mysterious Stranger and Gunslinger is that the kind of being like the charismatic gunslinger, I think is a core fantasy than being the wise gunslinger, which is why everybody ends up taking Mysterious Stranger.
Yeah, that's fair. I had my favorite was I don't know if it's Paizo or if it was third party, but there was a period of time where I was going to join into the original version of Mark's Rune Lords game before it was rebooted, I guess. And I was going to join as a gunslinger who was a movement-based pistolero gunslinger who took advantage of Mark's rules when it came to scattershot weapons like blunderbusses or dragon pistols, and the spring attack feat, so that I could move 40 feet in a round, not provoke attacks of opportunity, and melee, and basically shoot these pistols in melee and then run away before they get to attack me, which was awesome. To be honest, I actually really like that build. I really like that character.
Yeah, unfortunately, that relies on Mark's rules, which are interesting, but that means you can't just pull that out in a random game.
I could play that in a random game. It's not as effective because you don't get the basically the scattershot thing was anytime you use a scattershot weapon in melee, it auto crits.
I thought it just did like ×3 or something.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's what I mean. Just like in terms of damage.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so I was it ×3? It was ×2 or ×3. It was more, right? But I think that you could make it with just regular, having pistols, having spring attack, running around the map and shooting people from point blank range.
Yeah, you probably mean shot on the run, but that's just me.
It's totally shot on the run. That is 100% true. It's shot on the run. It's also like wind stance or something. There's more to it. There's a couple other feats in there.
Yeah.
I think I needed to have dodge and mobility in order to get shot on the run. But anyway, this is all about gunslingers, which is not about Maguses. The Magus builds that I see people go are what keeps me off of what I mean. I would love to make a Magus too. I just kind of feel like I've seen a lot of them, and I want to see some other stuff get played, which is why I'm not super into rolling one myself.
I feel like you just watched Barry play Fortis like a bitch, and you were like, I can't do that. Forever sully my reputation.
That is, maybe that's the case. I don't know. What's the next mechanic down the line?
Magus Arcana.
Oof, Arcana. Yeah, I like these mechanics a lot on classes, to be honest. The ones where you get, rogue talents, rage powers, that kind of stuff. I think they're pretty sweet.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there is a whole buttload of them. Like Jesus, I don't think we have time to go through all of them, but did you have any in particular that you wanted to?
There were a couple that I like, but honestly, a lot of them are just kind of. See, this is also when you. I think a couple of them are very flavorful, right? Flamboyant Arcana, which allows you to get opportune parry and riposte, which is a swashbuckler deed, or I don't know. There's other ones that are just kind of like crazy and weird, and you're just like, where did this come from? There's one that allows you access to a key pool so that you could roll, Magus, Monk, multi-classing more effectively. But a lot of these are just kind of, one of them allows you to scribe scar-based tattoos on yourself that you can cast from as scrolls, which is awesome. That's a super flavorful ability, right? But a lot of these are just kind of still magic. Cast one spell per day with the still spells feat, right? Quickened magic. Cast one spell per day with the Quicken Magic feat, right? Gain a familiar, that kind of stuff. And I don't know. There's nothing I really wish there was something along the lines of totems from the Barbarian Rage powers in here. I think that would be a really awesome addition.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
No, absolutely. I also think that the thing that I want is it's just somewhere down in the third party stuff. They exist, but I want either an Arcana or an archetype, because I think this is something that's specifically missing that lets you wield two-handed weapons and do that, because I think that's a fantasy that's very specifically underserved by this class.
I almost think you would have agreed with you, but now that the Blood Rager exists, I kind of feel like the Blood Rager is that.
But the Blood Rager is different. That's I think that there's still room to be I don't know. I think there's still room for not a raging person that wants to use two-handed weapons.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I just the base I feel like there's an archetype for it, right? Hypothetically,
you're probably right.
There probably should be an archetype along these kinds of lines, but the baseline Magus, as far as I see it, is
you're probably
a lot more
right.
akin to the swashbuckler.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think part of what happened here is that I've seen it solved in third party Arcana, and so that was kind of my first.
That's also the other thing that. The other half of that is that I have not seen the third-party Arcana, so I didn't even,
I specifically looked at it. I think somebody, maybe Mark pointed it out to me, or maybe I was just looking at it. Or, one of my players, asked me if there was a way to wield two-handed weapons as a Magus, and I found that answer. I searched for it.
Gotcha, yeah.
And, in searching for it, you come across third-party content that lets you do it. Although I can't find it right now, but something I wanted to point out. Maybe I've pointed out all the ones I wanted to point out on the Arcana that I thought were really good, or really really cool. I think that the Disruptive Spellbreaker and Dispelling Strike, that kind of line, I think is pretty awesome. It's kind of like Anti-Mage Magus. I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, yeah, I'm down for that.
And this Dispelling Strike in particular, because you could use your Arcane Pool to cast a Dispel magic when you hit, and I think that is just a really cool, solid thing for me that I think makes a lot of sense and makes me, and I really like personally.
I really like the critical strike one. So when you score a critical hit, you can use a swift action to make a touch attack spell to cast a touch attack spell. First of all, that's powerful. Second of all, it's just kind of awesome. You know what I mean? General, to crit with something and then just follow up with Shocking Grasp or whatever other vampiric touch.
Oh, man, I didn't. Oh boy. Hold on 1 second. No, I'm just getting flashes of like a very cheesy build to make. I wonder if fencing flamboyant arcana counts as having panache for the purposes of the fencing grace feat, and if I can cheese the Magus super hard with this.
I doubt it, but fair enough.
I mean, it's like you still get the most out of that. It's like, oh man, because you pointed that critical straight out, like, oh, I could use that with the rapier. Oh, I can get dex to damage with rapiers now. Oh man, that would be like the greatest. Like that would be like either the best or the worst thing. Cheesy, in terms of cheesy builds, but that's a little bit off topic, I guess. But
so for the next couple of I kind of feel like looking down, there's really not all that much that's of super interest. But to take it piece by piece, spell recall at 4th level, Magus can use Arcane Pool to recover spells that they've already cast. Which is effective, I guess. I don't know. It seems good.
Yeah, it's. I actually think it's. So the Magus doesn't have a super big spell pool, so the ability to cast to recall those spells with your Arcane Pool if you don't have anything better to do, I think is actually pretty powerful. And I think is good if you want to play a more castery Magus rather than like an Arcane Pool Magus, if that makes sense.
That's fair. Okay, yeah, that's true.
And so I think it's fun, or it's good for that that way. I think the bonus feats are kind of like they're like, well, we're combining a wizard and a fighter, and they both have bonus feats.
So might as well, but they can be any of meta magic item creation or combat feats. Yeah, I think, honestly, so many classes have bonus feats like this that it almost makes me wonder if, like baseline feat progression needs to go up in some way or another. But that's kind of neither here nor there. The knowledge pool allows the mages to cast spells that he doesn't. Wait, I want to make sure I'm saying this right because I just realized it could be one of two things. Okay, so Magus has learned spells kind of like a sorcerer's spells known, and so what he can do is when the Magus prepares his spells, he can expend from his arcane pool in order to incorporate other spells from his spell list into his prepared spells for the day.
I don't think he prepares his spells like a wizard or like a sorcerer. Which is a
misreading of mine. No, it's that he has spells known like a wizard or like a sorcerer.
I don't think he does.
Oh wait, God! Now I'm really confused.
Yeah, this just seems like a bad feature. I don't think either of us have looked at this too closely, but I think it's just like.
Well, so I misread it at first because what I thought it was, and this admittedly is better, and I thought it was better was, it kind of like spell kenning on like the Scald, right? The Magus can spontaneously swap out spells on his prepared list for spells on his spell list, but that's not the case because it's when he prepares spells he can choose to treat a spell from a list that he doesn't have in his spellbook as part of his spellbook, which is
I guess like if you didn't have access to the spell for some reason, like you couldn't find a scroll of it and write it down, this would be because this lets him pick any spell arbitrarily on the Magus spell list and use it. If for whatever reason he doesn't have it in his book, which costs some amount of money or whatever. But it doesn't seem that powerful because that's usually not a problem.
Yeah, sometimes it bugs me a little bit because I think keeping honing spell lists is a tool in the GM's toolbox that I feel like this undermines a bit, but that's kind of like that's a really nitpicky thing.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you, but I think it's got an appropriate cost for it.
That's fair. And it's also like it's not like he gets it permanently, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's not a big, it's not a big fear that he's going to like go crazy with this.
Yeah, and I would argue if the spell is so bad in your opinion that you wanted to prevent him from having the spell, instead of trying to like manufacture that through the availability of the spell, you should just outright ban it if you're really that hard on the spell itself.
Yeah, that's also kind of fair. At 7th level, they gain access to medium armor without the arcane spell failure chance. Fairly straightforward. This ends up progressing to heavy armor. Spoiler alert for anyone who couldn't see which way the wind was blowing. Which I actually do like this, because I do like the idea of, nimble Magus progressing into full plate Magus, though I kind of think it'll basically stop at not adamantine. What's that breastplate one? Mithril breastplate, which is just kind of universally by raw like the most effective piece of armor for classes like this, because it does not restrict your movement speed. Improved spell combat just gives a circumstance bonus on concentration checks. I totally thought that this is where we was able to cast more spells as part of the full attack. That would have been so broken. I don't know why I thought that.
It's kind of the natural progression.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of like if you don't think too hard about how broken that would be, and he's like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Yeah, that is 100% what I. Yep, that is 100% what I thought. Fighter training, half his total Magus level counts as fighter level for qualifying for those feats. I guess. Improved spell recall. Just he can expend. It's a more efficient transaction. It's no longer 1-to-1 from the arcane pool to the spell list. It's now 1-to-2 for one arcane pool, 2 spell levels. Heavy armor at 13, greater spell combat, concentration check is harder to beat. So this is an ability I like a lot, to be honest. At 16th level, when an enemy within reach of the Magus successfully casts a spell defensively, that enemy provokes an attack of opportunity from the Magus after the spell is complete. I kind of like, and this is something I kind of wish was in line, right? If this was in line in the Magus, and I think it would fulfill this kind of flavor requirement. I like the Magus also being flavored a little bit towards the anti-mage. So for instance, if the Magus got that dispelling strike thing in line or something along those kinds of lines, or like they got disruptive as a bonus feat, just like little things like that, I think that would be a really neat kind of flavoring for the class in general. Because I do think that anti-mages are a cool a cool mechanical subtype to exist in.
Sure, but I think that's a little too directed, right? Like you can get all of those as Arcana, and I think that fulfills that kind of wish, right? I don't see a need to force that onto to force that into the mainline of the class, when I think it belongs very well in the Arcana if you don't want to be that kind of anti-mage.
Yeah, but the thing is, the danger here that is in my head is that you look at the Arcana and then you take all of the bland Arcana and you haven't actually found any flavor in the class. You know what I mean? In that way, yeah, you're forcing flavor onto somebody, but this way, if you take all of the bland Arcana, you still have this anti-mage stuff. I also don't think that it's all that, the counter-strike is powerful, and that's why you get it at level 15, but I don't think disruptive, the being like that kind of disruptive spellcaster is really all. I don't think it would eat that much into the power budget, comparatively speaking.
I see that, I guess.
A certain part of it kind of comes from that level. I do think the mage is probably overpowered in the grand scheme of things. It's a little bit of a Yasuo phenomenon in the sense of somebody who's a master of the Magus, who really pushes the class to its limits, is going to be really hardcore effective. And so there's something of it's correlated to the player's skill level, but I also think that some of this comes from the flexibility of the class. Like, for instance, if you replace these bonus feats that they get with like disruptive feats and then budgeted out something equivalent-ish to the bonus feats in other places, I think that you could have that same flavor, have a similar-ish power level, and because like the flexibility is you have to have more in the power budget when you're being flexible,
right,
compared to when you're being specific.
Yeah, I think part of the problem there is that when you go to design archetypes, you have to then start pulling, though you have to target disruptive and like Dispelling Strike first with your archetype replacements, because that's the most defining feature, right? If that makes sense. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, but I don't think that's the end of the world, and I think that there are plenty of archetypes that keep that in place without too much trouble. In the sense of the fighter, I actually don't even really think the baseline fighter is all that quote unquote bland a class, just because I do think that weapon training and armor training put you into a neat spot. In terms, like, nobody else gets armor training. I've bitched about this on the cast. I want other classes to have armor training, but the fact that it is a unique fighter thing does flavor the class one way, I guess, for me. And so, yeah, that's the thing. Armor training is pulled out on every other archetype, but I don't know. I feel there's a lot of conflicting viewpoints that go into this kind of thing. But I like Counter-Strike a lot. It's cool. Tags of opportunity are nice. I think Magus is skewed towards dex and combat reflexes anyway, so it's kind of in line with that stuff as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, the level 19 ability, greater spell access, basically allows him to use the wizard spell list to add spells into his spell book.
Oh yeah, I remember this. It's because spell access doesn't exist as a feature, right? It's called greater spell access, but there's no spell access.
Oh my god, I think you're right.
Yep.
It's called knowledge pool. It should be called greater knowledge pool.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, because that's what it is. Knowledge pool is what allows you to cast off, like, things you don't know off of the Magus spell list.
No, it doesn't. We just went over this. That's not what it does.
Wait, what?
Knowledge pool doesn't let you do that. Remember?
Wait, what did I say it does? It lets you prepare spells. Did I say cast?
But it's not off of the major spell list. It's just not in your spell book.
Wait, hold on.
Knowledge pool. Sorry, folks at home. We gotta go back to this. Knowledge pool doesn't let you cast spells off of the not wizards or not major spell list. It just lets him cast spells he doesn't have in his spell book.
But from the Magus spell list.
Yes. Sorry.
Oh, that's what I mean. I don't know if I may not have mentioned that. Yeah, my point is, knowledge pool allows you to cast spells on the Magus spell list that you don't otherwise have in your spell book. Greater knowledge pool, which is basically what this 19th level thing has, is now you can use stuff from wizards, though they go straight into the spell book, so it's not really a one-to-one.
Yeah, this is probably like an editing snafu. But hey.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And then the level 20 ability, which no one has ever played ever because they're always, level 20. When the Magus uses spell combat and his spell targets the same creature as his melee attacks, he can choose to either increase the DC to resist the spell by +2, grant himself a +2 bonus on checks made to overcome spell resistance, or grant himself a +2 circumstance bonus on all attack rolls made against that target. He also doesn't need to make concentration checks when he's casting spells defensively.
Yeah.
When using the spell combat ability. Pretty straightforward stuff. Very powerful.
Pretty standard OP capstone ability that no one ever gets to use.
Yeah. And then we get to the fun stuff, right? This is archetypes.
Yeah, did you have any other Magus Arcana that you wanted to point out? Just as for completeness?
No, not really. I was pretty... Yeah,
the only other one I wanted to point out is Pool Strike. Not because I think it's particularly interesting, but because I had mentioned it a couple times, but you get... It's a very standard, very blastery. You can spend 1 point from your arcane pool to hit somebody with a damage type like acid, fire, electricity, or ice. And there's some upgrades to that too. It's very simple, it's very basic, but I think it kind of fills that kind of like, well, if I don't have anything else to blast with, maybe I'll blast with my points.
That's pretty fair. That's pretty cool.
But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to point that out because I had mentioned it several times. I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out. But anyway, to the archetypes, which I think are a lot of fun. I think we should maybe alternate with like a chosen archetype each until we run out of time. Does that sound good to you?
Sure, that's fine.
All right. What's your first one, or do you want me to go?
My
first?
favorite archetype is the Kensai, which is actually like pretty ridiculous. It's got a lot of pieces to it, but I think the pieces are in and of themselves just really cool. The Kensai dedicates himself to like his single weapon, such that he actually only gains proficiency in simple weapons and a single martial or exotic melee weapon of his choice, and he's not proficient with anything else. He's got diminished spell casting, but he has a couple of cool abilities. The awesome one is Perfect Strike, which at 4th level, when he hits with his chosen weapon, he can spend 1 point from his arcane pool to maximize the damage of that weapon. So just, a great sword would just do 12 damage. Also, so would a great axe. It doesn't change stuff like, sneak attacks or anything like that. But he can use 2 pools to also power up the strength of his critical hit. His fighter training is a little bit more advanced than the other ones. And he gets a little bit more benefit out of critical hits just because of critical perfection, which adds his intelligence bonus on all critical hit confirmation. And, he just gets those cool, like these really like, Rurouni Kenshin kind of like abilities like a Kensai may always act and may draw his weapon as a swift action during a surprise round, though he is considered flat-footed until he acts. And during a surprise round, when attacking a flat-footed opponent, he adds his intelligence modifier to damage. At 19th level, a Kensai's initiative roll is automatically a natural 20, and he's never surprised. Like, I love these. These are such neat abilities. His level 20 ability is Weapon Mastery as the fighter class ability, which is replacing, obviously, the spell combat. So I think that the Kensai in general focuses less on the spell casting and more on the kind of like magic weapon side of things, where you are powering up your weapon with your arcane pool more than you are worrying about spell strike and spell combat.
Yeah, I also think it's really interesting because it's also like it's also very much the kind of counterpart to Kensai was originally a 3/5 prestige class because everything in 3/5 is prestige class. That was very much like a very crit focused, lent itself to being a very cheesy type of fighter build, and I think this is a very cool interpretation of that kind of fantasy. And I like in particular, I think that Perfect Strike instead of like the Kensai got like doubled crit range in a bunch of ways. Perfect Strike making it maximize damage, I think, is a good compromise on that keeps it from being too cheesy. I think it's actually a really cool set of abilities too. I agree with you. I think it's a very good kind of magical swordsman set of abilities.
Yeah, definitely. I also like superior reflexes, where a Kensai can make a number of attacks of opportunity in a round equal to his intelligence modifier. which stacks with combat reflexes. I don't know how somebody would trigger 12 combat reflexes in a round, but if you're a Kensai, you can fucking do it. Like, I don't know. I just love
Combat
stuff like
Patrol,
that.
man. Combat Patrol.
That's what it's all about.
Oh man, now I want to make this, but buddy, we can't do these, or else we'll just end up making infinite characters that I'll never play.
What was your hit me with your class?
So one of my favorites is the Skirnir. Not sure how to put it, but I like it because it's essentially the shield Magus. You get to hit people. You get to do the big thrust is you get to do spell combat with your with a shield, and you don't have the spell combat or the spell failure chance when you're using your shield. You also get like the Kensei, you get less spell access, or you get diminished spell casting, but you also get to treat your shield as a bonded item, and you can use your arcane pull to make your shield better.
Yeah, that is actually pretty sweet.
And you don't get spell combat until level 8, actually, which is interesting. But I think it kind of lends itself to, like, you're not fighting so much as you are being defensive. And you know, it lets you use the spell strike with your shield bash, so you shouldn't be waiting in full attacking necessarily early. You should be playing a defensive shield person, which is why you've taken this class. This is why you've taken this class, presumably. But I just think that's it's just really neat. Like you can use spell shield, which lets you do spell storing on your shield, and you can at 16th level use it instead of Counter Strike, which the base Magus gets. You can, when you get hit, activate the spell that you've stored in your shield. And I really like the flavor of like a guy with like the magic shield, right? Like it's, you know, like if you wanted to build a Braum in Pathfinder, this might not be a bad way to do it, type of deal.
I think there's a couple of these that we can just kind of go down the list. Like the Bladed Scarf Dancer, who uses, obviously, the Bladed Scarf. The Eldritch Archer is also, it's the Magus built for archery, right? The Staff Magus. I actually like the Staff Magus a little bit more than the others, just because I love the ability to, I think you get it at 10th level on the Staff Magus, which allows you to, if I have a Staff of Lightning Bolt, I can use it as a melee weapon, right? Like, that's just, that's so cool. And it has an enhancement bonus equal to, the Staff's caster level. I think that's, I don't know, I think that stuff is awesome.
See, I like Bladed Scarf Dancer for because he gets extra Dancer Arcana that lets him like do funny stuff with his scarf, like attempt steel combat maneuvers, or teleport on critical hits. That even though it's kind of like, it's the Magus with the weird weapon, Bladed Scarf Dancer holds a special place in my heart. But similarly, like you said, we can kind of blast through some of these. Green Steen Slayer is you get sneak attack.
Yeah, you get sneak attacks on that one.
Esoteric is it's the unarmed version. I don't think it's like the monk hybrid.
The Eldritch Scion, I think it's a bloodline. Yeah, it gets
Eldritch Scion's actually kind of significant because you also become spontaneous. You become a spontaneous caster, and you get like diminished Blood Rager stuff.
Yeah, you get, but you don't get Blood Rage as the caster's Honestly, one of my favorites of these ones, which I think is the coolest, but also the markest, is the Card Caster, which is kind of like the Gambit Twisted Fate one, where you could use a Harrow deck as weapons, but because the Harrow deck is its own thing that I just do not understand. When you pull, this is kind of like the Tau, like beginning at 3rd level, when the cardcaster randomly draws and throws a Harrow card matching one axis of his alignment, the card's critical threat range is increased to 19 to 20. And if he draws and throws a Harrow card matching his alignment exactly, the attack's crit multiplier also increases to ×3. Just the,
and if it's a full
of the fucking moon. if he throws it in a direction that it is, in line with magnetic north, right? Like, I love that. I think that's fucking...
I feel like there needs to be some wording in this role dealer too. It's like, well, I built my hero deck and it's all of my exact alignment, guys. Yeah. Like,
I also like the hex. What is it called? Hexcrafter, which is a Magus who borrows witch hexes instead of spell recall and can use hexes and curses and stuff like that. I think that's a neat ability just in and of itself, because I like witch hexes a lot. I think like that's a good meaty, flavorful class feature that definitely belongs somewhere in an archetype for, Maguses.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Magi, I guess. Spellblade lets you have an offhand weapon made of like magical energy or whatever.
So see, this is actually this is almost making too much background because I've discussed it with them. I actually think that Spellblade isn't well done. I think that, this is the one I'm thinking of, right?
This is the one that you create a dagger of force in your offhand.
Oh, never mind. I'm thinking of the one that was in Occult Adventures. I didn't think was very good.
Spire Defender?
No, I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Keep going. You keep talking about the spell. I'll figure that out.
The Spellblade just is built a little bit for like 2-weapon fighting, is basically. But the thing is called an Athame, and you get some neat new arcana where you can sacrifice prepared spells to create your Athame. That's what you do in general, but then you can also use it from your arcane pool, and you can power it up with your arcane pool. You can parry stuff with it. You can throw it. It's a neat little like off class, I guess.
Yeah.
Which one are you looking for?
Mind Blade.
Oh, Mind Blade. I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't like this one a lot. I wish it was cooler.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it feels so much worse because it should have been so much better. I think. Yeah,
definitely.
Like the concept is there, but it takes a little too much to get to like the point where your weapons are worth it, and like it does the thing that I like I've said before I hate, which is the option or like the pieces later kind of give you a little bit more options instead of giving you more like a better thing to do. Like at 7th level you can get 2 of them, and at 13th level you can use it you can make a 2-handed psychic weapon. You can essentially let you form weapons with your thoughts. Like that's a fairly good what's the word?
Summary.
Or it's a fairly good fantasy to want to play, right? Like and this is like a harkening back to the old psychic stuff or the psionic stuff from 3.5.
Yeah.
Like, being able to kind of like hold out your hand and like cover it in like magical energy and like stab someone with it. I think that's a perfectly fine fantasy to kind of target, but I really think that this doesn't do enough with it that's cool, and like the later stuff just doesn't really serve it out well.
Definitely. I think that I don't know. I think that there's more that could be done. Those are all of the archetypes that I like, but I do want to mention 2 more because they're the ones I see most often, which are the Bladebound and the Myrmidark.
Okay, yeah, I definitely wanted to talk about Bladebound.
Go nuts.
Actually, let's talk about Myrmidark first because I also want to talk about that because I had a player move from Myrmidark to Eldritch Archer, and I think that people played Myrmidark a lot because it was the only ranged version of Magus available until Eldritch Archer came out. And I think Eldritch Archer just did it right. Like, I see what they were going for with Myrmidark because it gives you both melee and ranged. I guess if you wanted to be kind of like the man-at-arms, it would make sense, but I just don't I think that's like one too many things for the Magus to juggle, is kind of like moving from range to melee and pulling all of that off together in a really satisfying way. What did you want to say about it?
just that I see it a lot, right? It's the one that people seem to. It's one that people seem to come to because it's very much filing out a lot of the inline Magus abilities for this ability to kind of be a fighter light, and I almost wonder if that's indicative of something. Do you think that maybe this is one of the ways that people deal with the fact that it is such a giant crunch of a class, is you take this archetype to kind of simplify stuff?
Yeah, so,
I don't know. I don't know. I think there's a lot.
Yeah, I think
to be said.
I think part of it, like I said, I really think that primarily it was the way to be arranged Magus before, like Card Caster or Eldritch Archer existed. Eldritch Archer came out within the past 6 months, I want to say. It's not. And,
yeah, that's recent. It's super recent.
And I'm actually super surprised that it took them that long to get out. So I think Myrmidar kind of filled that niche to want to be essentially an arcane archer without having to go into prestige classes, because prestige classes are by and large kind of not great in Path. Maybe not great, but just kind of like not the focus of Pathfinder, so they tend to not come out. They tend not to flow into the game as well.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen releases of. Do they just not release them anymore? I guess.
I think they come out in like weird places. Like the Tech Guide had some.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah,
that is really weird. That is really awkward.
I don't think I've seen one in the mainline book for a long, long time. At some point they were like archetypes are better than prestige classes, which is, something I think that is very true. But
that's fair.
But yeah, to get back to the point, I think if you wanted to be a fighter with a little bit of magic flavoring, Myrmidar might be the way to go. And I think that's it doesn't get there all the way, but I think you're right there that like if you wanted to be like a little bit of a magical fighter but not a whole lot of magical fighter, Myrmidar might be what you looked at.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the Blade Bound. Jesus Christ. I always call them Black Blades, but that's not actually what they're called. They are called Blade Bound.
They might be called Black... maybe. I was saying on D20 PFSRD they're called Blade Bound, but that might be because it's got like a copyright name, like Black Blade.
That you know what? That might actually be the case.
But anyway, their biggest thing is the Black Blade. Explain to me... so the Black Blade lets you grab... essentially, you get an intelligent weapon that's part of your character. It upgrades with you. It's got all the bonuses and negatives that intelligent weapons have. It kind of goes with that. And I think it seems super powerful on face, which is why a lot of people take it.
Really? I think a lot of people take it for the reason that I was kind of getting at before, which is like the blandness of the class from a flavor perspective. Black Blade, that is overloaded, man. That is some spicy, flavor added to the class. And I think that this is where a lot of people find like a narrative hook rather than the mechanic hook into the class. Not that I'm really I don't really think Blade, well, now that I consider it, I think that's an okay possibility in theory, right? Like, you could kind of sort of solve this problem by implementing something more or less along these mechanics, if not one-to-one. But I think that it's such a flavorful archetype that people just see it and they're like, oh, man, what a great, what a cool thing. And now my character has to, argue with his Black Blade about stuff, and it talks to me and shit like that.
See, I was gonna go from the other direction. Maybe this just points to more of our Captain Crunch theater kid dichotomy. But to me, it seems like a lot of free power with a downside that isn't real. I think this happens sometimes where like you can't really enforce the ego penalty, like the intelligent weapon penalty, so much without it being a terrible experience for the player, so it tends to kind of get pushed aside.
Wow, jeez. I didn't even think about it in those terms, but yes, I agree when you say it that way.
Yeah, spoilers, when Mark played the Magus that I was talking about, he played a blade bound and like, you know, fucked shit up with his black blade and like, you know, didn't really have to like deal with the fact that his intelligent weapon was weird. And I don't think that was him like playing down the effects. I just think it's a pain to deal with as a GM, even just from like remembering. Okay, well, remember to roll your ego, whatever, to make sure that the thing that no one else is doing gets dealt with.
Yeah, that's sucky.
Yeah, I'm sorry to knock down your optimism with my Captain Crunchiness, but
that's definitely no. I think you are right in there. That is a correct assessment, I guess. I don't know.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say about it before
No. I feel as though we have got to the bottom, I guess.
I think the only other one I think I wanted to mention, I think Spell Dancer is neat in concept. I've never really like played it, so I can't really say or like even seen anybody try to play it. And it's also an elf one. I always feel how do you feel about racial archetypes in general, buddy?
Oh, I'm sort of with it when it comes to racial archetypes. I think that they're neat and they're cool, and I like them. I would probably personally make more of a I don't know, in the for deep marshals, right? It actually says a few non-dwarves have earned enough trust to be trained as deep marshals or whatever. That's kind of my stance on all of the racial, it's more of a suggestion than a rule, and I think that that's important.
I just want to say when you said deep marshals, I thought you meant like people who go deep into martial classes, and then when you started talking about dwarves, I'm like, wait, dwarves? Wait, Spell Dancer is an elf, not a like. I'm just imagining a dwarven Spell Dancer. I thought that would be, and I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, continue with your point because I think it's.
And that's just the end. That's just
right.
That's it. Right? Is that I'm okay with racial archetypes. I just think that they are they're guidelines, right? And that if you are Elfie McElfington from Elfland, but you're a half elf instead of an elf, right? It's bullshit that you can't be a spell dancer.
I mean,
right?
You could because you're a half elf.
Oh yeah, I guess you could. But I mean, if you're a human,
yes, is
my point, right?
Like if you were Will Ferrell in Elf, because and I think sometimes it does make sense to make it kind of like it's very few for like so. This is kind of gets into more of a fluffy perspective, but Spell Dancer is a very cultural archetype, and so I think that you're right for that. I think it's some of them like just looking at Fiend Flayer, which is something I'd never read before, but it's supposed to work based on like pulling your own infernal blood, and that's something that comes directly from like the physiology, or like some archetypes let you burn uses of your racial abilities. I think obviously those have to...
Yeah, that's fair. Those definitely are a little bit more restrictive, though. I definitely think that you could be a Fiend Flayer, with the right backstory, right? Like you could be a human Fiend Flayer.
Sure. And there's actually there's a feat for specifically for humans. You can take like there's a feat that lets you count as something else. I almost don't think it's worth a feat for that. Like I think I'd let a player kind of have that feat for fear, maybe as a trait, if I was really feeling like I wanted to pull them down a little bit. But
yeah, but I guess that's that is the Magus for people who want to understand a bit about the Magus.
Yeah, if you wanna be a battle mage, you probably want to be a Magus.
Yes. Yep. That's true.
But yeah, what's coming up from us?
Geez, what is coming up? Well, Inside Baseball. After this, we're doing Shadowrun. Like literally right after.
Shadowrun will be after this episode goes up, but after we've recorded, but before the episode goes up, Wednesday is Hell's Rebels.
Yeah, you guys are going to free Vigo, the third of the NPC advisors that you've been tasked with rescuing. He is in places that I guess you haven't actually figured out where he is yet, but you know who knows where he is, basically. Yeah, I guess that's it. You can follow us on Twitter and stuff. My Twitter is @BuddySola.
Mine is the one true mango.
Yeah.
You can join our Facebook group.
Yeah, we have a Facebook group.
SoundCloud.
That's true. And following us on SoundCloud. Yeah, that's also true.
And if you want to tell us why you like the Magus or don't like the Magus, or I don't know, maybe you think something else is a better battle mage, you can email us at somederpsplaygames@gmail.com.
That's true.
You can also comment on the SoundCloud. You can also follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/somederpsplaygames. And you can follow our YouTube channel at, I'll post it because it's not an easy to read link. Yeah, I'm not going to get on here and be like, follow us at youtube.com/QR3. That's not worth the effort. Yeah, I think that's about our show. Goodbye, dear listeners.
Farewell, dear listeners.